A story about being possessed was told by a female friend. She said her neighborhood had this uncle living near her house. He worked as a commune official. His name was Uncle Kai. Often has the habit of exercising in the morning and in the evening in the fields. Sometimes when you have free time, you often meet him when you go for a walk in the evening. Or when you go running early in the morning, you often see him. At the end of October, the rice fields have been harvested and only the roots remain. That morning, around 9 a.m., Uncle Seven went out to the fields to catch crabs and fish. He discovered a person with sandals on the riverbank. And a few fields away from the riverbank, there was a person wearing sandals. White tank top, lying in the field. Uncle Eight went closer and discovered that the dead Kai was lying face down in the field, one leg bent and one leg stretched out, and that caused an uproar in the whole village. Everyone just came out to the fields to watch. The scene was kept intact while waiting for the police to return for an autopsy. When the police returned and turned the body over to examine the outside, they did not find any injuries. The clothes were not wrinkled, there were no scratches, there was only a light mark on the neck. And after a preliminary check, the police judged that Uncle Kai had passed away the night before. He did not pass away early in the morning. Because this uncle slept in a separate room, the family did not find out that he did not come home last night. The family did not know anything, so the next morning his wife and children still went to work and school as normal. The police suggested an autopsy, but the family suggested that they skip the autopsy. And the family held Uncle Nhan's funeral like any other funeral in the village. After Uncle Kai's funeral, things started to happen. Everyone in Uncle Kai's family often hears scraping sounds, sometimes in the house, sometimes in the yard, and sometimes outside the gate at night. 3 days after Uncle Kai's funeral, there was a person who was also a bully in the village, specializing in dumping pond land and land on the edge of the village to appropriate the land, then selling it. They brought money and burned incense, and tell your family to pay your debt. No one in my family knows about this debt. This amount of money was very large and very valuable at that time. The other person also did not say clearly what kind of debt he had, he just said he was repaying the debt. On the day of Uncle Kai's first week of worship, all the brothers and sisters gathered together. In the early afternoon, when the women had finished eating and the men were drinking, suddenly Uncle Kai's sister-in-law, who also often went to the temple, suddenly rolled her eyes and her face turned red and she pointed her finger. Cursed at the group of brothers and sisters. She said, "I'm sitting here and since morning until now no one has said hello. You all ate and drank lavishly and no one invited me. I will arrest all of you." Then she pointed at a nephew and said, "I will arrest you first." When everyone saw that, they immediately knew she was possessed by a ghost. The women were so scared, the men stood up and walked towards her. She also stood up and pushed down all the dishes on the table. The men had to turn around and hold her arms. Uncle Kai's wife and children also ran out crying, hugging his neck, asking if he had anything to say now. Uncle Kai's eyes were still staring blankly, his whole body was struggling. He cried and said, "I died unjustly. I died unjustly, so I will force you to follow me." Everyone kept asking me how unjustly I died, but Uncle Kai didn't say anything, he just said, "I died unjustly." Then suddenly the ghost raised his hand and grabbed a cousin and said, "You must die." Everyone in the family was scared. His 2 younger sisters immediately took a taxi to the temple, while some others went to cut strawberry whips and look for dog blood to bring back. The mulberry trees were brought in first. When Uncle Vong saw it, He just smiled and said, "Don't scare me with childish tricks." Uncle Kai's mother was also over 70 years old, so when she saw this, she picked up a mulberry whip and hit him hard on the wrist. His mother cried and said, "I beat you, you ungrateful guy, come out now, you don't love your mother, and you want to arrest more of your family." She beat and cried. After a few whippings, she got tired, let go of the strawberry whip and sat down to cry. Her children and grandchildren had to take her into the house to rest. Uncle Vong still did not care about anything, still refused to escape. A while later, his family found a bag of dog blood. Soak dog blood in strawberry whip. Uncle Vong laughed, his eyes widened. But because it had been too long since the uncle's ghost had possessed his sister-in-law, everyone wanted to expel him, so just ignore what he said and continue holding the whip. Soaked in dog blood, he lashed at his waist. He struggled and screamed but refused to come out. "I will force all of you to follow me." After a while, his two younger sisters returned and brought a monk to the temple. This monk held incense in his hand, burned an amulet and chanted a spell for a while before the spell escaped. That night, the family also took the uncle's body to the temple. Everything seemed to end here, but it didn't. After the day he died and was taken to the temple, his wife, children, brothers and sisters, everyone went to see a fortune teller to see if he had died unjustly and died at a poisonous hour. Because no one knew exactly when he passed away, the family only looked at the time of the autopsy to see, and most people received the answer that he died at the hour of death. So the families of my brothers and sisters set up an altar, invited the shaman to cure the insects, and each person was given an amulet to keep with them. But another strange thing is that the uncle who brought money to burn incense to pay off his debt, 3 days later that uncle also secretly went to the temple of a teacher more than 10 kilometers away from the village, to set up an altar to worship and paint, and also went to the temple to ask for help. Amulet to wear. After the disappearance of Uncle Nhan and his family, claiming that he had died unjustly, combined with his mysterious death, along with the faint mark on his neck, the villagers talked among themselves that he was mistakenly killed. That day, the police wanted to do an autopsy to find the cause of death, but the family discussed and decided not to do an autopsy and signed a commitment. So the deceased uncle may have resented his family. Everywhere I go, I see people talking about my uncle's death. Said that if he had a stroke, he would have fallen to death right on the riverbank. If you go to the bathroom, you don't have to go that far. And every day, the route I usually take to exercise is not this route. The route he went to exercise that day was also taken by another person in the village. This person is also a commune official and also has a relationship with the gangsters in the village. In short, there are many theories. But the dead are already dead, and the buried are already buried. He is also an official of the commune. Of course he and other officials in the commune also have relationships with the people in society to appropriate and divide land. If we discuss his death now, it will involve many things and involve many people. How many apartment and urban projects, how many land compensation plans, how many delicious pieces, not easy to lose. Everything gradually passes. After Uncle Kai's 100 days passed, his family and neighbors forgot, and his ghost was locked up in the temple to practice. Everything seemed peaceful. Until the day of Uncle Kai's sister's daughter's wedding. That day his eldest son named John, who was studying at university, also came to help from the previous meal. The day before, Mr. John came to help her set up the theater. cook chicken and drink wine very normally. On the wedding day, John himself arrived early in the morning to help. But when it was time to eat, around 10 a.m., everyone called John to come in to eat and drink. He didn't come in, he just sat in a corner drinking tea alone. Everyone thought that he was tired from working the day and night before, and it had only been over 100 days for his father, so that's why he was sad. So everyone just ignore me and let John sit alone. He sat alone and watched everyone eat and drink. After a while, he took out a bottle of wine and poured himself and drank it alone. No one paid attention to him. After eating and drinking, the family prepares to welcome the groom's family and then take the bride to her husband's house. At about 3 p.m., everyone was cleaning up and preparing dinner, when John raised his hand, pointed straight at the bride's parents and cursed, "You guys are uneducated, marrying your child without inviting me. If you don't think anything of me, I will teach your spouses and children a lesson." Then John raised his hand and slapped the bride's mother in the face. Everyone was confused, not understanding what was going on. The bride's mother asked if it was Uncle Kai. "If not me, who would come in here? I've been here since morning until now and yet you guys are eating and drinking lavishly, no one comes out to invite me." It sounded like lightning had struck everyone's ears. How could he have brought the uncle's ghost to the temple and locked him up, but today the uncle's ghost still managed to escape to the wedding? The uncle was aggressive, his face was red, his eyes were red, he grabbed his nephew's neck and dragged him away. "You have to follow me, he's so scared, I beg you, please don't make me die, I'm scared very much." After being rescued by everyone, the boy ran all the way home. He was so scared that he dared to leave the house for a whole week. Seeing the noise at the wedding, the neighbors came out to watch. The family had to work very hard to tie John up and take him home. When Uncle Kai's younger sister saw this, she called the monk at the temple and said that his ghost had fled home. The monk was very surprised after hearing this and asked again and again several times. The new monk said that he would come to the uncle's house immediately, and would bring a jar to catch the uncle's spirit and bring it back to the temple. The monk also did not think that the spell was so strong that he would have enough ability to escape home. Meanwhile, at his uncle's house, John's legs and arms were tied tightly. The uncle's family went looking for strawberry whips, dog blood and even child's urine to soak in the strawberry whips, and continuously whipped John's body to make the uncle's spirit come out, but the uncle's spirit still could not escape. His mouth kept cursing his two sisters for daring to bring the monk back to arrest him and lock him up in the temple these past few days. Uncle Vong kept cursing, "I'm out now, I'll force all of you to follow me." One day, two monks from the temple came by and were able to capture and lock up the ghost. Those two monks also helped restore all of his family's ancestral incense bowls, and always comforted his family. His family is also not allowed to worship him for 3 years. And later on, you won't hear any more stories about the ghost. And his death is still a mystery. And this is the end of the story. Everyone who listens to the story finds it interesting. Please give me 1 like and 1 subscriber. I hope everyone has fun listening to the story. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.